get the data, right? Like where to look at and how fast can it get the data. Okay, and to answer this question, we need to understand where the data lives in a computer and how quickly the processor can actually access it. Okay, so for that we'll look at the speed pyramid, and at the top of the speed pyramid we're gonna have registers. Okay, so we'll have registers. So registers are basically like the fastest so the registers are basically like the fastest elements, and they're like directly inside the processor. They're used for like immediate calculations and hold most critical values. Okay, so like they're used for calculations and hold most critical values. Okay, and next we have what? Next we have the main memory. Okay, and this main memory, it can be RAM or ROM. RAM means random access memory, and ROM means read only memory. Okay, about the memory, so the main memory, of course it's like below the registers, right? So which means what? It means that it's slower than the registers. Okay, and but it is much larger. Okay, and the main memory, this is where like most of your programs and variables lives during the execution. Okay, so you can say like programs and variables live during execution. Okay, and lastly, what do we have? We have storage. Okay, so if you want to like compare the speed, what do we have? So first of all we have registers, second we have memory, and third we have storage, which is of course the slowest. Okay, and you guys have to remember this speed pyramid, because I remember this was like the final exam question, like one of the MCQs where we had to like we were given like which one is better in terms of speed, and we had like options like storage, memory, register, and options like this, right? So we had like register, memory, storage. So of course this one is good, right? Because we have register are the fastest, and then we have the memory, and the slowest ones are the storage, right? Okay, so if you're like wondering what is storage, so storage is basically like the SSDs or the hard drives or like the USBs. Okay, they're like hard drives and stuff, you know, they're huge, but also they're like the slowest. So like you can like call them the long-term storage. Okay, so now here's where it all get interesting, right? So the CPU needs to move the data between all these layers constantly, but it doesn't just randomly guess where to look. Okay, and that's where the addressing modes come in. Okay, they're basically going to tell the processor exactly how to interpret a memory address. Okay, where to fetch it from a register, from a specific memory location, or even compute it on the fly. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about the 4 types of addressing modes. Okay guys, so these are the four types of addressing modes that we have. So first one is absolute addressing, the second one is register direct addressing, and the third one is immediate addressing, and the fourth one is finally indirect addressing. Okay, so I will go over each of them one by one. So for now, let's go ahead over absolute addressing. Okay, and absolute addressing is, by the way, also called direct addressing. Okay, so absolute addressing is basically when the memory address is encoded into the instruction. Okay, so for example, we have something like load R1, and then we have some memory address given to us like ABC0. Okay, so we have something like this. So how do we interpret this? So this can be interpreted as like load the contents of this given address. Okay, so load the contents of ABCO into R1. So if it doesn't make sense, let me explain. So we have this address given to us, right? So what it's basically telling us is like LD, load into the R1 this address, right? So we have this address given, and load the contents of this address into R1. Okay, so if you still don't get it, so you can basically write the same thing in RTL. Okay, and if you don't know RTL is basically register transfer language. If you don't know what is RTL, don't worry, I have already explained what's RTL in the previous video. So if you go ahead and check the playlist and the previous video that you found, like intro to computer organization, in there I explain what's RTL, so you can check it out. But those of you who have already watched it or previously know what's an RTL, you can write the same expression into RTL. So if we go ahead and write this in RTL, so this expression will be equivalent to R1, and then we have like memory address given to us like ABC0, something like this. Okay, so this is the same thing but written in RTL. So they're telling the same thing, right? Store the contents of this memory address into R1. Okay, so this is basically the absolute addressing. But if you guys wanna like see it visually, so I can show you that as well. Okay, so this is the visual representation of the absolute addressing. Okay, so if you guys wanna store like the memory address of this one into R1, so this is how it's basically gonna work. Okay, so here you have IR, and here you have register 1. Okay, so the IR basically stores the current instructions to be executed, right? So what's gonna happen is like it's going to place the address from IR, place the address from IR into the MAR. MAR is the memory address register. It holds the address, right? So what we are doing, we're placing placing the absolute address from the IR to MAR, and then the read memory. Okay, the read memory place the contents into MDR. This is MDR, memory data register. Okay, and then MDR is going to move the contents into the R1. Okay, so this is what is basically happening. From IR going to MAR, and from MAR reading to the memory, and then after reading the memory, placing the content into the MDR, and from the MDR to R1. Okay, so this is basically the absolute addressing or the direct addressing. Okay, and in the next video we'll go over register direct addressing. You can find a link to it in the playlist, and I will go over all these absolute addressing that I mentioned, so make sure to check out all the parts.